It's time for Class Racing Today, the podcast for the NHRA class racing fan. Welcome back to Class Racing Today, classracingtoday.com. We are right in the middle of Christmas and New Year's. 2022 is right around the corner. 2021 has been an interesting year, a fun year for the show here at least. We've gotten to talk to quite a few people. Brian, you've had some interesting plays with your car this year. Bobby, you had a milestone out in your car this year. ClassRacingToday.com if you want to help support the show. Keep these conversations going as we start the new year. Next week, you can do that at ClassRacingToday.com. Go there, click on the donate button, and you get to choose the value that you get out of the show and turn that into dollars and send it our way so we can keep these conversations going. Gentlemen, how was your Christmas?
Mine was good.
Excellent.
It's we had beautiful weather here, and then
Yeah, we did.
all of a sudden winter hit, and I think I had, like people have like midlife crises, like, oh, I think I hit a sad point. Like 43 years, my body's always embraced the cold weather. Like I never had to wear thick socks. I never really had to wear boots. Like, zero with the sunshine. Like I could still go outside in a sweatshirt, and I was happy. And I got invited with a customer ice fishing yesterday, and we spent 4 hours in this fully insulated, self-propelled fishing shack, and my feet are still cold. It was 50 degrees in there. I'm like, why has my body stopped like processing cold? I'm like, man, I thought that week in Florida sucked because I'm fat, so I sweat, but at least I can handle the cold. I don't know where I'm supposed to live now. I get cold, I get hot. Like, I don't know, Bobby. How's the weather out there?
The weather here is in the 30s, 40s, which is, I don't like it. So we went to Florida for Christmas this year.
Whatever.
And we did the whole Disney World and Universal Studios thing. We left on Wednesday before Christmas, and we just got home 2 days ago.
So did you have It's a
So-
Small World after all playing in your head the entire trip home?
I embraced my inner child. So I'm the kid in this family. Actually, I get myself in trouble because I just want to keep moving, ride to ride to ride. We got to go, 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 go. And not them. They were like, all right, can we stop? Can we at least eat? Can we get a drink of water? Like, no.
Did you
Are
get
you
sick in the
crazy?
teacup?
Grab a churro and get in the next line. You eat it in there.
Did you ride the little teacup thing?
We dragged our my stepson on all kinds of roller coasters. Went out telling him like, what this is all about. Like the Hulk ride has like 7 loops in it. I got off of that walking like I couldn't even walk straight. I felt like I was, under the influence, and he was fine. So yeah, we had a good time, and it was good weather. Water park on Sunday. Now I'm back to this gray. It's been gray since we got back. So
Good stuff.
Like
I
what
need
is
to get out of here
what is the temperature there?
in Jersey right now.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't go outside today. I'm assuming it's in the 30s though.
Well, take your shirt off, run outside, and then come back, and we'll know if it's colder than it is here or not.
That's a
Like,
great idea.
I think
Sure, it's not as cold as it is there.
Friday our high is like 5 below, and I'm
I
just
would-
like,
Yeah, with a
Definitely.
low of 22 below.
I would definitely hate my life if I lived where you did. I'm not gonna lie.
I feel like if my race car wasn't torn apart in a barn surrounded by snow, I would just load up and maybe move south and go camp out in our guest today's backyard. Because, yeah, I'm not really liking South Dakota right now.
But before we get
Do
there,
they
if you have
make-
any questions or comments, you can send them to classracingtoday@gmail.com. And also, if
comments
you're
about the
watching
weather.
live on the Facebook, don't forget you can also send us stars. That's another way you can show a little love to the show. Send some value our way. Thanks so much. All right. What do you guys have for us today?
We got a D7 standout. All right. Now I went on Drag Insights today to see just exactly how many classes this gentleman has run since 2015. He's run 17 different classes that I know of. So he has the ability to find some hidden gems out there, run some pretty cool cars. Once in a while he'll dabble in like a cool like muscle car, and then he'll go back to running, I don't know, V stock in a 1986 C10 like pickup truck. So he really I guess sometimes he just enjoys spending more time on the track than other days. And I think he's qualified. Potentially may have qualified number one at Indy in the last like so many years. Oh, we'll have to ask him that. Anyways, straight out of Las Vegas, Nevada, Mr. Paul Wong. Paul, how you doing?
Thanks for having me. How are you guys?
We're great. Just admiring all those trophies in the back. I mean, covering an entire border of wall. You might have to do a 360 with your camera. We want to see if it goes all the way around the room.
It goes pretty good, actually. I mean, it goes from there and it comes around. And if you go out, it goes the whole room. This room, anyway. One of the rooms.
Might not be any room left. You might have to retire.
Come on, Bobby. Your row there could probably almost fill a fish tank.
He's gonna have to start putting them on the fan blades up there and taping them on.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So how did you get started racing, Paul? I want to dive right in. Like, I want to know, where did you come from?
Well, my father did it when I was a youngster, and it was one of those things that he did it for a while and then quit, and there was cars around, and I kind of had a lot of interest in what he was doing and looking around at it, and it was something that it kind of faded and came and went. And then I got to be about, a teenager age, and there came a point where my father was like, well, if you're interested in cars, let's go look for something. And kind of dove into the deep end of the pool. We found a 63 Dodge aluminum front end, 415 horse coupe. Went and picked this car up. It was in pieces, and I started piecing it together. That was 1985. We actually got that car running late 86 and early 87, and I dipped right into a stock automatic. It was kind of a deep end of the pool. I raced a little bit here and there, going back and forth, and it was one of those situations where it was a tough. But at that point, there wasn't a lot of newcomers, and being a teenager with a Max Wedge car, it was kind of an odd situation. Lots of mentors and lots of people helped. I mean, I had one of the other Division 7 standout Mopar guys, Steve Wan, his father, Don Wan, was very helpful. Jack Fries, Greg Luniak, Bob Elliott, they were all great people that actually helped my first teardown, looking like a deer in headlights, somewhat scared. I mean, teardown at that point was definitely very intense, more intense than it is today. And they got me going from there. And I was always a Chrysler guy and always into Max Wedges. And I got out of college, got tired. I got beat heads up late a few times with those cars. They weren't fast. Got under the wing of Richie Pauly and bought his 69 R code Cobra Torino. And at that point I got the hook on being fast and qualifying, being able to outrun, hit people heads up, as I bought a current record holder and everything else. And that changed my whole outlook. That was a lot of fun to drive that car. Car was kind of an animal. So it was, we did have to put a lot of weight in the trunk. There was a lot of weight difference between Richie and me. And Dick Dreer, I remember at the time, building a weight box, putting us both on a scale, trying to figure out how much weight we had to put in the trunk of the car. It was kind of fun. Made that thing, it left like an animal after that, though. It was something else, even for, early mid 90s, for a car to leave with the wheels way in the air was a lot of fun.
Where did that car ever end up?
It changed hands several times. I sold it to Dick Lux in Texas. Dick had sold it. It came back to San Diego. Then it went back to the Midwest and got redressed as a Randy Payne Ford drag team car, which it wasn't. It was an original race car, and it was Race Since New out of New Mexico, but it was not Randy Payne's car. I believe it is now for sale, but I think the really good parts, the really good heads, the Pro Trans, all that stuff, I think has been robbed out of it. I don't think it has that, because the car's, God, 6/7 slower today than it was when I sold it in 2003, I believe. I mean, it's not as fast as it was then. So I believe it's for sale again. Those cars live forever. Once you build these cars, they live forever. it's a rust-free muscle car type car. They're not going anywhere. The question is whether they get restored, which my second Max Wedge car, I had a 64 Polar 500. It went back east and got restored completely as a street car. And so it's at this point, it's like I said, it's just a garage queen at this point. But that one lost its racer status, but they don't go away.
So was your father, was he a purist, like a Mopar purist, or just a car purist? Like
he's a car purist. In 81 today, he's still, he's got a couple of AC Cobra kits. He's got a couple of Barracudas. He's got a really odd 65 Dodge A100 with a modern Chrysler drivetrain in it, and I think he's even got a new Nissan Z car. I mean, he's got a lot of cars for somebody his age, and still rides a Harley. Even, I mean, it's pretty amazing at 81.
I'm like, how do you go from a Mopar to a Ford like that? That Ford must have been really fast to suck you over to the dark side.
And I always liked the car. Richie was, and I watched Richie pound people with it. It was kind of one of those things, and it was unique. There was no, at that time, I think there were maybe 3 or 4 Torinos in the country. I mean, I just saw that, I guess Mike Wenke's car is still floating around Division 4 somewhere, but there was a few of them floating around, but it wasn't a Cobra Jet of choice, I guess, because it was a heavier car. I mean, even in D at that time I ran that thing, it was 3730. It was a heavy car. So it was unique, but it was something different. And I mean, I'm not a Mopar purist. You guys will get into that as this goes on. I mean, I prefer Chryslers, but I'm not that big into it. I've always said, I'm kind of real forgiving when it comes to these things, and I'll drive anything. I just don't like front wheel drives. I've driven some front wheel drive stuff, and that does nothing for me. If it's going to be in one of the slower classes, though, my gig usually is it needs to be fast, and I mean really fast. There's no reason for me to be in a slow car that's not going to qualify, number one win class or do something like that. When you get into something that unique, it gives you the ability to build something that there's some gray area there, and you can find some things, and there's lots of innovation, I guess, in a slow car. And there's cookie cutter things I can't. And we've got fast cars too. My wife's got a full 46 pack Barracuda. So, I mean, I some of that stuff, though, you've got to get into the point where you start buying really expensive components. I mean, it's just the way it is, but you get into, a 4.3, El Camino that with a V6 in it, you're not going to just call people and say, send me this manifold or send me that camshaft, or is the transmission guy going to know what converter, what gear stack to put in the transmission? They're not going to know these things. So the guesswork gets to be a little more. The fun thing for me is the slow cars seem to like the same things. Once you start to read the compression and the camshaft, making changes gets to be pretty simple. I mean, they all follow the same routine. They're on the track for a long time. Generally, they don't have big camshafts, so they all kind of work the same way. It's just you apply and hit them the same way, and they seem to work out, pretty good. A lot of pressure from friends now, though, to park the slower cars and get into something fast and get back to where I was trying to win races with something, I guess, as my buddy Charlie Downing would always say, 10s or faster, get into something where you can win, in a stalker, and super stalker still, once again, get into something quicker.
That's pretty cool. Where'd you go from the Torino?
From the Torino at that time, I had several cars, and I was in college. I didn't have a ton of time and a ton of money, and that's when I built the first U-Stock car. I built a '66 Belvedere wagon, and then I've had a lot of mentors in this that long before, and we'll get into the AHFS stuff, but long before the book was online and it was so easy to read. You had to buy these sheets from NHRA, and I had a couple of friends that had very extensive books, and a couple of them called me on the phone. They're like, "That's the bad car." So I parked that Belvedere wagon and put a 500-inch aluminum head motor in it as a street car, and found a 2-door 65 because the carburetor was better. And that was kind of the next car I ventured into after that. And that car provided a lot of entertainment. That it got me going to Indy on a regular basis 20 years ago. Lot of fun battling. Earned a little respect in the process, but a lot of people talking about, you'll bring that old heap back here, and as soon as you cross the Mississippi, it'll lose 3/10 somewhere, and you won't be running with us then. And that was kind of entertaining. I mean, I know when I got the car to Indy, got off the trailer, it lost 3/10, and I was beating my head against the wall. And if we had the modern schedule in Indy, I would have been a lost cause. But because I had Wednesday to run the car, figure out why that little 2-barrel wouldn't burn water, which was pretty much the problem, and I was able to go out, Thursday morning and qualify in the top 10, and went from 75 under to 110 under, and all of a sudden I was in the okay crowd as bringing that car back there. After that, I spun off that combination and put that combination in a 65 Valiant. Started putting sticks in those cars, so I ran that car in Q and Q stick. In between there, my wife and I, we built for her to drive. She had a 74 360 Dart Sport. After that, I talked with Jerry Bennett kind of extensively, and I built a 76 Volare, which was a good combination at that time in the late 90s. Hadn't been beat up too much, and that was good. And that gets us, into the late 90s. At that point, another mentor of mine, Chuck Norton, said it's time for us to try to get into the injected stuff. And we had bought a Camaro from Mike Keener and John Cavatayo. That started a good run. The LT1, LS1 style cars, even the V6s and the F bodies. I'm still not out of those. They're great race cars, and we spent a lot of time with those. That car was fast. I drug that car around the country quite a bit. Then as Chuck wanted to actually step back, he had built a really good super stock F-body LT1. We had traded back with, some funds back and forth, and we had a super stock LT1 car, which that car we didn't have all that long, but it was really successful from the get-go as far as class and the Eliminator. I think second race my wife drove it and went to a final in the car right away. I mean, it was just, and that combination today is still stellar. It's just, I'm not sure if people just don't want to run super HIJ. I'm not quite sure what the reasoning is, but it's still a stellar combination. You've got a good crowd of people that own those cars. They're really intelligent and really diligent about protecting that combination, as well as going fast, but not making any mistakes either. I mean, that combination has been the same horsepower for, almost 20 years. And then there's just been a list of cars built in between in there, which I kind of avoided my own rule of when people get in that they're better off buying a car. But some of the stuff that I got involved with was so obscure that it just, you couldn't just go find it, I guess. I mean, it's just been a long road of just like Bobby referred to the truck that a bunch of people came together, namely Jim Marshall and Paul Dilcher and the Downing family. Really, they stepped up, and we built that thing in 60 days. It was one of those things to show up at Indy. There was a guy in Division 5 that had one, Richard Mullenhart, and he was going really fast. And we watched that, and we're like, oh, okay, that's something we ought to put together. We can make that fly. And we had to round up parts. And I remember I called in favors to CP to try to get pistons, because it is a unique short block. And some people were like, well, I'll just take a short block out of a Camaro or a Nova. You'll be fine. And I'm like, this is going to get tore down. It's got to have the right parts in it, and I said, if we go number one, trust me, it's going to, and sure as anything, it was number one, but it grabbed the first spot in the barn with the engine hoist in front of it. It was just one of those things. So, but that was a fun effort. I still have that today. I don't think I'll ever get rid of that. It's a fun vehicle. It's been refined a lot since we've first put it together. I mean, it's been, transmission, gears, and just the engine's been, things have been gone through and updated. It's a good vehicle for what it is. I mean, it really, for a 118-inch wheelbase pickup truck, it leaves good, and it's a lot of fun.
Is it hard to make that work right out the bat, or like is it
you
think with the weight
it was so
distribution?
soft, it ran really good, but by the time now that it's it unfortunately just got horsepower again, because another that same truck that I went to battle in Indy got sold, and it's up in Division 5 right now. I don't think he's quite aware how the system works, so it got 6 more horsepower because he went to one points race and laid down a bunch of second 10 under passes, and it took a pretty good clip of horsepower now, so it moved. That's now an MNO car. So once it got to somewhere around maybe P, it became more drivable. It wasn't trying to hide how fast it was. But now at this point, you guys, now I am, you're starting to work on that thing some. It's not quite the gift it was. It's still favorable, but it's not just a complete gift. I mean, like I said, when I started out with it, it was a kind of a joke. There was a whole plan of people in 2012 trying to be number one at Indy. And we were lying in the weeds. Nobody had any idea what I had brought or what I had done or what happened. That first qualifying pass, there was people with cool boxes all over, because, and at that time that was not a freebie race either. You took the horsepower for what you did. You took it, and you took it like an adult. And if you got 10%, 11%, 12%, whatever you got, 8%, you took it. And it was one of those things. But there was people wanting to be number one at Indy that bad that they were willing to take power. Now we knew we were taking power. It was one of those things. It's just, but the conglomerate of people with me to put it together, we wanted to be number one. That was the idea. And like I said, it was just really soft. That truck really had no.
It was the same truck, like Larry Hill was running that combo.
No, Larry Hill always ran a V6.
Okay.
So that there's a lot of possible combinations that go in those pickup trucks, believe it or not. They were sold with a lot of different. The V6 is a pretty good combination, but that was the one that when they decided to start splitting sticks and automatics, that was the one where Larry Hill he put a Jericho in his truck, and it was fast in V-stick. I mean, he went. God, I want to say he went 1290. It was pretty stout. I mean, it was.
Go back to that for a second. You said when they started splitting sticks and automatics, they didn't always do that, because I guess I'm still young and new.
The stick and automatic horsepower was generally never split at one point in the game. All
right, so you're talking about just the horsepower. You're not talking about the actual class runoffs.
Oh no, the class. It's always been split. That's been split since the beginning of time. I don't know. I know a lot of people all for morphing that to get more heads up runs, and I do agree. I mean, I know there's a whole bunch of following that say that heads up runs will change this, and heads up runs will make the factory sensor work better, and I couldn't agree more. Mixing the sticks and automatics, I'm not quite sure that's gonna. I think it'll cause more drama than it will help, because then you're gonna have, and you always have complainers. I mean, it's just one of the things. I mean, go on any forum or any website, Facebook Class Racer or whatever. I mean, you have about half racers and half people that I don't know what they're doing. I mean, or they have a car that they haven't put down the track in 15 years, or they're building something, or they don't race anymore. But I think the whining, when you combine those, will be pretty intense, because the rating, if you get somebody in there having to battle each other heads up. I mean, take a really common car, for instance. You take a Ironhead 375, 396 Camaro, and it's 409 horsepower with an automatic, and you are 385 horse with a stick shift. Well, those automatic guys aren't going to take too good to that, one way or another. But then, you put a 283 stick guy, that's got a, say like a 67 Nova, 66 Nova that's rated at 229 with a stick, and it's 220 or 217, whatever it is, an automatic. Well, the griping is going to go, the other way towards the automatic's favorability. So I don't think there's an easy fix to all this, but at this point, people, this if I just open a can of worms, it's going to take some common sense, and I don't know at this point if there's anybody that's willing to spend that time to do that. This whole horsepower system was based on discretion before the AHFS was based on discretion and based on, the common sense of actual NHRA, tech and people of that nature that would get together and give horsepower. But there was some vindictive horsepower. I mean, there was just, it didn't, like I said, the AHFS was a great idea. But the problem is anytime you put something in writing together, it can be manipulated. I mean, it just has. And that's why you have a couple more renditions recently with that whole formula that's gone out there, so, and it is what it is. Like I said, we got that truck got put in the books because it was never in the books. If you fast forward to 2018, the El Camino that I brought to Indy, well, it was in the books, with a flat tappet camshaft, but it was never in the books, as an 87 with a roller V6. So we got that put back in the books, or actually Bob Shaw got that put back in the books, and a little meeting of the minds there and going back and forth. And that thing became wicked fast, but it had never been touched. It had never been factored or anything else. Will I say that thing's got the wrong factor on the window? For sure it does, but that's the nature of the beast. It's been like that since the beginning of time. I mean, I remember, say Martha and Dave Thompson showing up at Pomona with a 94 Firebird rated at 275 horsepower. I mean, I'm sure, Brian, you can assimilate with that. Imagine, taking 100 and, well, you're an LS1 now, though, still, but going and taking something at 358 and moving it back to 275 and see how fast it is. I mean, that's always been the case.
I think
new cars have always come into the factor, and that's, when they got factored and they were supposed to get caught up with, but that was the benefit for taking the risk of building something like that.
Yeah, like I think the LS1 came out at like 305. So I mean, what, 76 horsepower less than what it's rated now? Like, wow.
Yeah. When those were populating G and H in Indy, you were like, well, look how fast that is, and you stick a camshaft in the motor, put a 200 behind it, and you got a rocket. I mean, you didn't even have to do anything at 305 horsepower. The thing actually ran that good. Put 513 gears and an 8-inch converter, a 200, and a good cam in there, and CC the cylinder heads, and away you went.
But do you think right now, like the thing I have is, so you look at, okay, they were really underfactored, but then, the situation where two of them ran heads up and got hit. Like, I almost think there should be a way for things like to gauge the cars that are currently running. Like, it would be nice if, all right, if those cars aren't running, if there's not an average of, say, 85, maybe there's a automatic reduction on some of those.
I disagree with NHRA's new rule that a car can never get horsepower back. That to me makes no sense, because time's going to change, and times do change, and cars become less competitive. I mean, you've seen this since the beginning of time. I've ridden across the country with, these mentor Chuck Norton or a Bill Nelson or whatever, and I've rattled their brain listening to all the stuff that they've done over the years, and like Bill Nelson telling me, he had a 57, Ford station wagon that was, wide block with a supercharger on it, centrifugal supercharger on it, and people are like, this is bogus, how can this be, and then so that's always existed since the beginning of time. That's always existed. It's one of those things it's always been there, but combinations don't always stay good, and there's an age-old thing that I was told when I came in is a combination wasn't good, you don't run it. It's done. You didn't pick that combination. I mean, somebody Oh, well, sometimes when they put things, they make cars bad combinations from the get go. When as soon as the SAE ratings came in 72, 73, they came in and they were like, wow, take something that I'm fairly familiar with. Take a 73 Charger with a 440. Well, it's rated at 265 horsepower stock. Well, you're not getting it at 260. They immediately went in there and blanketed, put it at 350. Well, the car was never run for that reason. So I do think there still needs to be an option to get horsepower back if you want to keep this system like it is. And, a lot of people will call this welfare or whatever you want to call it, which, okay, maybe it is welfare for, dead combinations in stock limiter or combinations that have been just hurt that aren't competitive anymore. When Brian, you get to race somebody, somebody like, well, who's in your neck of the woods, like Al Corda, who has a new 2015 Camaro. Well, the engine's significantly better and you've got to run him at the same horsepower. It's probably not going to turn out real well. Yep. That modern LSX motor is not the same motor as that old LS1 you're using. So they should open this up now. Like I said, whether common sense is going to apply with how NHRA is going to deal with this, I don't have any idea. But that rule should be rescinded. That if it ever got horsepower, it can't get it back. Because that just kind of says, well, once it screws itself up, it's done. You might as well just you're going to have to figure out how to dodge a heads-up race, or you're going to have to figure out how to make it work at the horsepower it's at. It earned what it got, and that's the way it's going to stay.
And the other thing too is if they correct the other ones faster, it is all going to come relative. But my nemesis right now is these new Challengers. Dino out there can, I had a heads up on him. He was 250 on the tree. I was 2, and I still lost by 400. Just wild.
Yeah. And Ford has not put any of those in there, but they're always going to be around. I think he's using the 392 combination, but it's not. We have one of those as a street car. Trust me, I think it for a stock car to put some soft tires on it and a couple of not even bolt-ons that really change performance, but stuff to make a drive-by wire car more drivable to go high 11s at altitude here. They're rockets from the get-go. You can't pick up the same amount as you can with an old car, but it's still nonetheless, they need to offer something back. That system, people will say that system's completely awful. I don't agree with that. I think that system's there for a reason. It's just there has to be something there, and the discretion of tech officials. The tech officials used to have a much stronger pulse on the class as a whole at one point. So I think hitting something with horsepower, I think now, I don't know that the tech officials are as aware of all the combinations that are out there. So I think that they were more vested at one point to watch it carefully, and the automatic horsepower factoring system has made it so they really don't have to really watch anything. It's all dollars and cents and numbers. It is what it is. And that's why they've gone in and added a couple little more caveats in there to try to stop people from manipulating the system. But it's all in writing. If you want to manipulate it, you just need to be a little more committed to the cause. You can't go out there with their little add-on that they're going to look at 660 foot numbers. You can't go into a point where you're just going to be like, well, I'm going to go out there and dump it at 1,000, and I'm going to go 0.2 under, and I'm going to get more horsepower off this thing. That part ain't going to work anymore, which is fine. I don't think that should be that easy. If you want to get horsepower off something, you don't think it's competitive, then pull the timing out of it, go put a stock transmission in it, or do whatever to try to make it less competitive, but don't go out there and dump it at 1,000 feet and expect that that's how easily you're going to make that happen.
Well, and
like I said,
my theory is always, I'm not asking for gifts, but so you kind of have two ends, right? You have the uber genius like you that can find those combos and build cars to fit where they, where they're going to be competitive. You have another group of people that's just going to throw all the money at it and go as fast as they can because they're at a point in their life where you can do that. But then like I would consider myself as the entry level. Like I didn't pick my Camaro; it kind of picked me, and I wanted to be able to play the stock super stock game, knowing that I probably wasn't going to be, the fastest car out there, but I just wanted to get an exposure to it. And then, of course, once the needle's in, you get addicted and you want to go faster. And it's just like I couldn't see myself racing any other thing. But those F bodies are a pretty good budget way to make a nice, competitive, consistent race car. It's just hard to get them fast enough. So, and I knew that when I built the car, and I'm probably never going to be number one qualifier, but just I do feel they're a little overrated compared to like the stick combos, which are underrated. So I mean, there's just that stuff everywhere. So I either need to work on my stuff, go faster, or build a different car. But I do think if they could allow some correction, it's going to help bring back some of these cars that are maybe mothballed and help people get into more, just to bring more cars to the sport. It's kind of what I'm looking at.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said, I've got one car that I built with my heart. It's not the best combination in the world. And there's a couple guys in Division 5, and they've been picking at it, helping me. But I've got a 62 Savoy with 383 with inline 2.4 barrels. It's just, on paper, it's a great race car until you get to the intake manifold, and that's kind of the thing that sinks it. But sometimes you build things like that. And like I said, when you get in, sometimes like what you did, I think you made a great decision. A 93 to 02 F body car is a quintessential race car. I mean, it's got a giant traction bar under it. It's short wheelbase. I mean, it cuts the air. It's got all the qualities of what I would think make a great race car. I mean, the cars, if they spin, you're doing something wrong. I mean, they're great race cars. But at 381 horsepower, your back's kind of against the wall. I mean, that's a pretty, as far as LS motors are, that's the archaic one. I mean, you're using the oldest one with the most simple of parts in it. I mean, it can make a ton of power, but you get into the situation where you got to spot somebody, 35 to 37 horsepower, whatever you're spotting a stick car. I mean, that makes it competitive wise, makes it a lot less competitive at this point. So there's something to be said for it. I mean, but it's a matter of, like I said, are you going to go start spending cubic dollars trying to chase it or do whatever? I mean, because I think, the LS1 can still be pretty competitive, but I just don't, it's not going to run with one of those good challengers, and it's sure not going to run with a good, 2015 Camaro. When there's a couple other cars floating around A and B that they're pretty wicked, I don't know. I think Jason Line even got into B with his car, but I don't even know that that's so much as a great combination as it is just something that's been flogged further than rationally possible. I mean, that's more what's happened there. That car's had more effort put into it than you can possibly believe, really.
So do you have any knowledge to why the Firebird was put in at different shipping weights in the Camaro? Like, how does that whole discrepancy come in?
That's gone on since the beginning of time, since you had engineers involved. I mean, if you go back to, the 70s and I think the manipulation of the weight breaks did not start happening until the engineers started taking place, like with the Oldsmobiles and some of the different Pontiacs in the 70s, when they started putting in all kinds of crazy combinations. And, Oldsmobiles got really big camshafts all of a sudden, camshafts they never came with. But you had some great engineers out there in there digging. Some that I'm actually very tied to. They manipulated the book to make the thing, with the engineers to make it, for you, a WS6, a non-WS6, a Trans Am, one with a 1LE package, which, if you think about it, it's actually correct. I mean, the weight breaks should be different on something, but to put that many weight breaks in for those things, it was kind of a little different. I think the engineering went a little different when they started again with the next big run, when they built the factory stock cars. They just basically opened the can of worms with the engines more so than anything. But at one point in the game, they were really good about spreading the cars out, making them be able to run a lot of classes. And that was the idea. And I got to give the engineers credit for that. And, the manufacturers, they had involvement, and, they worked with NHRA, and they came up with reasoning, and with the Firebird, like I said, the real heavy suspension, they kind of made those cars which didn't make any sense. You always thought, you know, a WS6 car would run a actual faster class. But at this point, you know, they said, well, it had the heavy suspension. It's got all this other nonsense on it. It's got to run a slower class. And they were able to split those cars up, even though when you made them into a stalker, they didn't have any of that heavy suspension left on them. I mean, they had a spoiler and a hood left. That was all that was there, you know, for an SS Camaro or whatever. But it still, I see the reasoning behind it, and that was good. You know, when they came to build the FS cars at one point, they decided they were going to hit it with pure power. You know, we're going to come up with 600 lift camshafts and unlimited compression. And I mean, if you look at the compression of some of those FS cars, they're comp motors, but yeah, like I said, once again, that if the manufacturers want to take a vested role in what's going on, then I think that's a good thing. I mean, they should be involved, and that's what makes the sport go round. When we lose the manufacturers having a vested interest in it, then we got a problem at that point.
What do you think, like, as far as building a new car, like today, if somebody wanted to come in and build a car, like, what do you think the dream combo? We're going to pick your brain for some free advice.
For what though? What are you looking for?
I want to win and go fast.
You want to win and go fast. I mean, I think like what you're talking about, like Dan's Rust is doing. I think that's a good. I mean, these 15 Camaros are going to get beat up, but they're going to allow something else in. But I mean, it just depends on budget as to where you want to go. I mean, I would say some of those combinations are really good. I mean, there's some, you could dig into some of those cars and look into them. Bang for the buck. I mean, if you look at like the older Copos that are floating around, I don't see how you can lose. I mean, I've got friends that have got them, and I've picked their brain on them, and they just run and run and run. It's amazing. They change the oil and keep tires on it, and look at they haven't even pulled valve covers off those things. Just run them and run them. They're a well-built vehicle. I mean, I'll give them credit. I mean, the first Challengers were certainly not. I mean, I know people tried to run those with the engines they came with, and they came apart and what have you. But I mean, the new 5-liter Mustang with a no blower, you know, some of that stuff may be something that's a good avenue to go out there and win with. But I think it's the NA. It's really the NA Camaros and some of the natural aspirated Challengers. I think they're a good way to come in and win. But now you're coming in with a pocketbook pretty deep, you know, if you don't watch. But I think as far as bang for the buck, I think the older Copos seem to be the one of the good places, because those classes aren't super populated. I mean, you can end up in FSE at a points race or a national event. I mean, you get to Indy, then, you know, all bets are off. You know, everybody's trying to win class, and things have changed. But at every other national event or points race, you get into, you know, one of those FS classes that aren't super populated. The chances of running into a heads-up race are fairly slim. You know, you can put weight or add weight or move the car around and get into a, you know, class where you've got a good shot and a car that's fast, it's going to hook, and it's going to be consistent. I mean, I think that's, you know, and that's hard for somebody like me to say, but if you get into my mindset, of course, I'm looking at some really odd stuff, and I'm still building more odd stuff that people haven't even seen yet. But yeah, there's some good comment, and we're giving into that. We have a new Challenger basically just about completed. We've been struggling to get valves. That's actually been it seems pretty simple and pretty stupid for this to be the holdup, but we couldn't even get valves made for the thing. It took us months and months and months. So the car had been on the track at the end of last year. We couldn't get valves for the thing. It was kind of crazy for a 2015 Challenger.
So who does your motor work? Do you guys do it in-house, or do you have?
You know, the Chryslers, I've got Paul Haslauer, who's he's a great asset, and he has a lot of knowledge. But we have a lot of different people putting in different pieces. You know, Don Little's been kind of instrumental in helping me do things for ages. Mike Blackstone's another one that helps me do a lot of engine work, dyno. He actually has done some assembly as we've run out of time as far as, you know, life getting in the way. I've had him do a lot of assembly on things. But certain vehicles, you know, like I said, the V6 Firebird I have, that's still a Bill Nelson piece. So it just kind of depends on which vehicle they are. When there's as many cars floating around as I've got, it kind of a lot of times you're not going to, the same engine builder's not going to touch them the same way. So that ends up being a little different. So that part actually changes a lot of the situation at hand.
So I got to ask then, how many cars are in your stable?
Guess I knew you guys were going to ask this. I mean, I've got a 62, the 62 Plymouth Savoy, and I've got a pair of 65 Valiants, a coupe and a convertible. The convertible is a stick shift 273 4-barrel. And then there's I have the 65 Belvedere, the original U car that I've always had that's got a stick in it. We have that 76 pack Barracuda. Partners, of course, on a 69 375 Camaro that is back east. That stays back there with the 86 C10 pickup truck. We have a 72 Demon low compression super stock car. There's the 2002 Firebird that we run in super stock. I got a car that's nobody's seen anything of. I've got Larry Hill's 71 Charger. It was a little rougher than I gave credit for when I got it here. I had to change a ton of sheet metal on it, but that actually I'm working on that now as well. Trying to get that sorted out and put back together. Now that should be a pretty solid combination to actually do something with. It should be pretty good. So we should see that out probably in the next month or so, 2 months. We'll see that when the season gets going out the west out here. We'll see that thing show up.
So the hardest decision you have is which car you're going to drive when you go to the race.
Well, to a degree, but like I said, I've got some friends that are leaning on me pretty hard, and I'm at a point where I'm going to start driving stuff. If it's not faster, then I'm going to start leaning away from running them as much. I mean, that's something I'm just not going to stick myself. I would like to actually get back to the point where, winning a race is a possibility, I guess. And so I'm going to stick with stuff that's a little quicker right now. The slow cars aren't going anywhere, but when I go back east, I'll probably still drive the C10. But I still may end up driving the Camaro in A or B as well. So, and we're torn there, Brian. That's the same thing with that. I mean, that thing gets 20 horsepower off if we put a stick in it. And I have the whole stick setup sitting on the shelf for the pickup truck that I can put right in that thing. So, I mean, Charlie and I are definitely torn on putting a stick in that car because it's an animal with a stick shift.
Yeah, that's.
Are you on the list for Pomona? I'm just trying to check here. I see.
Actually, people are texting me as we speak to make sure to enter for Gainesville and Pomona. Right now, I'm going to enter Pomona right now as we speak, and then they're picking at me to enter Gainesville right now. So
I see Stephanie listed in the 440.
Yeah, and I'm actually she's going to drive that car with a 4-barrel though.
Okay.
I'm going to pull the 6-pack, the 6-pack engine out of it and put the 4-barrel in it. So, but yeah, I see Charlie over here he's hammering me right now to enter for Gainesville because that opens in a minute, I guess.
Oh yeah, grade 8 does open today.
yeah, that'll. I don't. That part I just don't get. I don't get whatsoever why that system is what it is.
You have a better proposition?
I think at this point they ought to let more cars in. I mean, I don't see why they're not letting more cars in. I mean, I know this was going to be one of the other angles you guys were going to look at, but I mean, letting in 60 cars just doesn't seem to make sense to me. I don't necessarily understand it. But it's one of those things that I think at this point they should be letting more stuff in than what they are. especially a race like Gainesville. You could, I don't know why at this point they don't want to let in enter 128 cars. At this point, I mean, it's one more round. I guess it gets to take up some more space. I'm not quite sure. And if they want the factory system to work, then don't qualify 128 cars. Maybe qualify. Even if you do 128.96, or if you let in, say, 80 cars, qualify 64, however you want to do it. I mean, that would be fine. And I know a lot of people
letting 70 in at Gainesville. Yeah, they are only letting 60 in.
Yeah. And so it's one of those things that I don't understand, like, the whole reasoning behind it. But at this point, it's one of those things that I would think that, I guess at this point, I would think they would think about it a little differently. I would think they would think about it in a way that they could manipulate. And sorry, I'm entering this race as we speak, actually, just so they don't hammer me and I don't not show up.
It filled up at grade 8 last year in 2 hours, I heard. So you have to be on the ball. Go ahead. You enter. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 different classes running at Gainesville. Mind you, Pomona is not full yet. If anybody wants to enter stock or super stock at Pomona, there's plenty of room left. But we do have the factory stock showdown at Gainesville. We have Pro Mod, which I'm totally not a fan of. People have heard me say that before, but in my opinion,
so what?
Crash your oil down and delay stuff.
Yeah, I tell you, the one I don't get what's going on with anymore is alcohol. It just seems like they maybe in some places back east, okay, yeah, but I think out here it's on the struggle bus, and it's just not. It's not what it was.
We need alcohol. I only like running national events where alcohol is there, because that's the only way we're going to get on TV for our 10 seconds at the end. If there's no alcohol there, there's no sportsman show. So we need them until they, by some miracle, we ever kind of get our own little sportsman show where they highlight all the sportsman classes and maybe give us more than a 10-second final round recap. But that's the only chance we have is with alcohol. And alcohol, to me, they don't have as many problems as Pro Mod. And I don't know. I just feel like everywhere I've been, even at Indy this year, I think Pro Mod had an accident, and the Jegs All Stars got pushed all the way to the back. The Hemi Shootout final round got pushed all the way to the back, and the crowd was all gone by the time we got to run all those things. And it's just like, why, But I know there's a big fan base for Pro Mod. They're unpredictable. They're wild. It's like, it has its appeal, but just not to me.
Yeah, I can see that being the case. I mean, they I don't know. And like I said, I see, there's this whole following for all this no prep stuff too at this point, which I'm not quite sure what the whole purpose of all that is either at this point, but I know that's another big following now. And I see it, they get a lot of fans there, and it changes, a lot of how everything works. So, I mean, it's kind of what some of the kids want to see. They want to see some of that stuff, and I wonder if that's some of the following with Pro Mod, is that people like to see stuff. I don't know if they want to see things crash. I'm kind of actually at a loss for what the reasoning for it.
That is what it. I mean, as sad as it sounds, anytime there's a crash, that's what makes the highlight reel. That's like when Larry Dixon went flying 50 feet in the air at Gainesville a couple years ago. That was on like CBS or ABC News too. I mean, it was just like,
yeah, that's
the only time a local news channel up here in Pennsylvania and Jersey actually showed it. So it's unfortunate, but that's what gets it gets views. So I guess that's the same thing with Pro Mod. I don't know. Out on the West Coast though, it just seems like Super Comp fills up right away, as opposed to the class cars. And then over here on the East Coast, class cars fill up. Stock will fill up in one day, And Super Comp, you can probably wait till like week 6 to enter if you want.
Yeah, if you should watch Gainesville. I'm watching the thing. It's going up like exponentially. The entering, it's kind of insane.
All right, in the last 5 minutes,
50
stockers have entered.
It's gonna be full in 10 minutes.
50 stockers entered in 5 minutes. It opened 5 minutes ago, right?
Yeah,
so
it's gonna be full
super
in 10
stockers
minutes.
and 50 stockers.
So sorry to take that delay away, but yeah, it's gonna be full in 10 minutes.
52 stockers.
Literally,
Yes.
everybody listening right now is like, "Crap, I gotta get in."
Yeah, it's kind of funny. So anyway, where were we at? So we can keep moving on. But yeah, I don't know what I wish I know. I'm sure everybody wants to see the magic wand with this factoring system. I don't know what it is. I mean, I really, really don't. I mean, if you think people aren't going to manipulate it, or the NHRA thinks people aren't going to manipulate it, they're just.
Well, it's a strategy.
Crazy.
It's a chess game. It's fine. Manipulate it. That's the way the rules are written. You're allowed to bunt in baseball. Use it. Manipulate it. Use it to your advantage. There are rules. You had to make something objective. I can't imagine just saying, "Oh, we're going to hit this with horsepower. We're using our common sense." You put a subjective, a point to it. People are really going to be upset. If it's just based on math, okay, fine. It can be manipulated, but at least it's just based on math.
Bobby, for the first 30 years, it was subjective. NHRA tech officials.
Yeah, that's scary.
You set a record. You set a record this week. You did this. So guess what? 5 horsepower. And it's just kind of one of the things. Like I said, I don't think that system can work. That's not something you can have happen. It's something.
But at least it takes away the theory that, oh, you hit me with horsepower because you don't like me. At least it got rid of that, I guess, is what I'm saying. Just based on numbers.
Yeah,
so,
and people still
now
claim,
it can be tweaked.
People still claim that they play favorites with taking the horsepower off and how they do everything, but it's just, and people forget that you've always been able to get horsepower off stuff. You just had to write a letter. Maybe the letter had to be a little more eloquent, or something had to be done where that letter, was good. And I've written letters for stuff being a mess before. I'm like this, and I'll say, whoever, Farmer or Jerry Valentine or whoever was on the list of people when they put a new car in the books, and they were like, well, this needs 30 horsepower right now. Well, because it's just bogus. It's like, I was talking about the SAE years when the things came out, and I don't think I don't even know if 340 Dusters came in at 240 horsepower. I think they may have been hit from the get-go, but I know a lot of the Chryslers and a lot of the GMs, they made them uncompetitive right from the get-go. They were like, what people will claim is one of the biggest abominations ever was like the 302 Fords, which have been and this is slow stuff. So this is slow trivia, which a lot of people don't really even care about. But, when they came in and put horsepower on those, blanketed on all the 302 two barrels and had them all around, 170, 180, 200 horsepower. And then they came back and put them all at the actual factory rating, somewhere between 129 horsepower and 160 horsepower. They moved, I think, God, it had to be over 100 combinations got all the horsepower taken off of them. And there was a couple people that were much like me, you have like a Gary Summers or whatever got in there and said, look at this freebie. And I'm going to number one qualify and take horsepower for for him, for the rest of his racing career. He's been able to beat that down for years and years and years, and I don't, out here, a friend of mine, Mike Graham, he's another one he went through the system, and it's there for the taking. I don't know whose infinite wisdom at NHRA thought that was a wise idea to do, but it breathed a little life into the slow cars especially for a while. People were building them, and they're still building them, because if you want to get in an NHRA race for really inexpensive and go 7, 8 tenths under, that's the combination to pick. It's really, really simple, and the parts are plentiful and the cars aren't expensive. You get into the Chrysler world with some of the stuff I do, the bodies are scarce and they can get quite expensive really quickly. And even like the dumb C10 pickup truck or the El Camino that I took in 18 of Bob Shaw's, those bodies are even getting expensive. You know, there's a following in the street market for those things, so they can get fairly pricey fairly quickly. So, but yeah, I wish there was a magic wand to wave to, you know, make 75% of the people happy, because you're not going to make everybody happy, you know, one way or another. And I mean, with that whole system, and there's people that complain and cry that they'll, you know, well, I can't race against money and I can't race against this. And, you know, I mean, and then there's the guys that make effort that's completely unbelievable, which, you know, some of those people I'm kind of close to, but there truly is no substitute for effort and people that will work on a car. I mean, you take somebody like a Steve Wan that just tears that car apart and tirelessly dynos it over and over and over. I mean, if you explain how hard somebody like that works on a car, it'll just wear you out. I mean, it's just, holy smoke, the motor's out of the car that much. And I mean, it's just kind of amazing how, you know, and there's tons of people you get into the A and B ranks, you know, with those guys that show up at Indy, there's guys that they tirelessly work on a car. I mean, it's not even just throwing money into the point. They got to keep, if you want to be the number one guy in those classes, it takes a ton of effort. I mean, it's just, they're constantly trying to lighten stuff, find the next big bang for the buck, or even the next, you know, small bang for a lot of money, just to get a little more and lead a little further ahead. It's kind of tough.
There's no perfect answer or strategy to any of this. What pleases some is going to upset others. It's just the way it is. Even last week when we were bouncing those ideas, like you said, take 80, qualify 64, like there was caveats to that. Like, who's not going to show up anymore? Who knows they don't have a shot at qualifying? Hiding the entry list. Who's going to be upset at that? Then they can't see who's going to be there. And then maybe they will enter. Like there's nothing. 95 under for the mine shaft now in stock.
Yeah, that's going to take that out of the equation basically completely, which at this point, like I said, I don't, penalizing people for going fast to me seems to be the wrong idea. I think you should reward them and, you know, go back to paying for number one qualifier. You know, there's plenty of sponsors that want to see people go fast. I mean, let's go out and I don't know how much NHRA or who does this goes out and actually seeks the sponsors to say, look, we want to make everybody go fast, so we're going to pay for the top 5 qualifying positions, or we're going to give, you know, and I don't see this ever happening again, but it would make a big difference if they gave points for records. You know, I mean, it's just,
why would they take that away? Points for records, points for class, a little incentive to just do certain things would be nice. If you're not going to give money,
stand on the car. Points will change. People will go for it. You know, another mentor of mine, Cal Method, did that constantly. You know, I mean, he had a barn full of cars. You know, he pulled and he was the master of the 283, but he pulled a 283 out of a Malibu station wagon and put it into, you know, a Impala wagon, or put it into a Caprice 4-door, and then just went and set another record to constantly get those points. You know, I mean, he won the division with those extra points. It made it so it was hard, you know, to get around him, because he would set a record at every race, you know. But I mean, yeah, and teardown's another thing. It just seems like there's so little of it. You know, when I came into every national event you go to, it was subject to teardown. You know, I mean, it was just something that was always going on. And I mean, those guys walked up to you in teardown. I remember guys coming up to me and reciting the numbers, like they didn't have a piece of paper in their hand and went, well, you know, the lift is this, and the bore is this, the stroke is this, and, you know, the CC of that is this. They knew these numbers like the back of their hand. That's not so common anymore, you know, and that's changed, you know, for the worse. But I think incentivizing people to go fast and possibly get horsepower for an incentive, you'll see more of it then. I think that is what as opposed to penalizing the guys at the bottom or taking 0.3 off the index, which is going to run off another, I don't know. I guess you really don't see any cars that go 0.3 under anymore. I know the last time they did that, it caused some grief and some people went away, but I don't think it caused as much grief as it did. I mean, it's just, they've thrown more parts at us and the cars have gotten nothing but quicker. You know, I mean, there's no hydraulic camshafts anymore. I mean, it is one way or another, they keep taking away more restrictions off these cars that make the ability for them to go faster, keep, coming around the corner quicker. So I don't think 3/10 off the index is an answer, but I think incentivizing people to go fast, I think that'll put some answer in it. I think the one race having Indy, and I'm not saying this because I abused it. One time was number one there with no penalty. And the other time the truck moved, I want to say at that time I moved 2 or 3 classes actually. After I left Indy, I moved almost 3 classes. I mean, it was one of those things that it was a great penalty to go number one there. So I've been on both sides of the coin. When Bob Shaw and I took the El Camino there, I said, how many people have, and that was more his incentive, because how many people have ever gone 2 seconds under at Indy? He goes, let's just do it. We got the ability. Let's do it. And so in 18, I did that. It's just one of those little bucket list items to be able to go that fast. It's kind of crazy that you think somebody could say they could do that, because most of the time you sit back and think about that, it's something that's like a fairy tale or something that's impossible, but you need something that's in the wrong class factor the wrong way for that to happen. But on top of that, I mean, the only other guy that did that was Larry Hill. The guy spent countless hours working on that pickup truck with a stick shift. I mean, and I don't know how much it cost, but the cost for him to be number one there certainly wasn't inexpensive. I mean, that was a huge transition, taking that truck to the chassis shop and trying to make it work. And it came together, but give some incentive to it. And so I think running Indy is a race where you don't have that penalty of horsepower. I think it brings it out. I think people want to come. It makes it interesting. And once again, Bobby and Brian, you get the people that are going to cry, well, look, this just shows how much people are holding. Well, now you know how much they're holding. Let them come there and show their wares and see what happens. I think, the fans want to see it. I think even half the people that say they don't like it secretly still like it. You get to see how fast something is. I mean, let's see what it's got. I mean, you got a G car that'll go 1050, then okay, let's see it. I mean, it's, people want to see it. I mean, I know I will tell you, since they put that back, I haven't really run up there to watch class the same at Indy. I would, if I was done or they pulled me to the side and I had already run, but I wouldn't, because that's the marvelous thing about Indy for class, especially when we got 175, 180 cars there. You can do a lot of watching in between your class being run. So, and when people were laying down big numbers, I wanted to see it. I mean, I was like, wow, let me watch the 305 Camaros go, 1060. I want to see this. And like I said, people are like, oh, that's impossible and whatever. I mean, those guys work hard on those cars. I mean, it's, you get into the effort in some of those cars, especially those guys that go there. I mean, you figure out how many times somebody pulls the transmission gear set out of a car, or, a wall of camshafts. I could have done this meeting in my shop and, point the camera at the wall of camshafts you go through. I mean, it's, I mean, you want to go fast. Sometimes you got to throw some effort at it. And that's where the effort shines. There should be a place for the effort to shine, I believe.
Well, and it's kind of hallowed ground, right? Like, what better place to go to than Indy? Leave it the way it is and let them run. And that's the track where make class
if you don't
great.
Want something, you don't want to be a part of that, or your car is slow, then don't go. That's the race you don't go to at that point. Stay away from it.
How about at least then use those numbers from Indy, okay, if you want to take away the hits.
Mm-hmm.
But use it. If you watch the car go 120 under there, at least use that if the car slows itself down to 50 under everywhere else, and just say, nah, we saw you go 120 under at Indy. You're not getting any horsepower back. Right? You're not getting a reduction. Could we at least just use that data?
That's fine. That kind of discretion. You go there and win class at Indy, and then you run it slow all year round to try to get horsepower off. At that point, you're abusing the system. And NHRA has their little bit at the bottom of their AHFS that there's some discretion, and something like that, the discretion should be used. There's no, without a shadow of a doubt, discretion should be used there.
All right.
So I got a
I
quick
mean,
I got a quick question as far as, I mean, I would say you're a NHRA purist. You want to go fast, you want to qualify, you want to win class, that stuff. What are your thoughts on like these bigger money stock limited races? They're basically the non-NHRA stuff.
I think they're a good thing. If I had them out here, I would partake in them. I mean, I know I was trying to figure out how to go to a couple of them. I mean, you know, the one Bohannon did at St. Louis was awesome. And guys, they got to run in crazy air, and I feel bad that it wasn't more attended. Actually, I think it was a good deal, you know, and especially let them have their shootout there. I mean, I think that was another thing that where they have their, you know, no breakout. I forget. I don't even know how they did, if it was a CIC race or whatever. I think it was a CIC race
CIC,
they had there.
yeah.
And I think that's people want to see that. I mean, I want to see it. It's cool. I was watching it on the internet the whole time. You know, the problem is being 2,000 miles away from me. I've got to play my cards as to what race I'm going to go to, you know, and it's time. But I'll tell you what, if they get another one of those scheduled around that, I would be definitely interested in it. You know, I mean, I think that they're a good thing. I mean, it's, you know, one way or another, like I said, you get those races like that. They get a little bit different clientele sometimes, because I don't know if people are adhering to the rules, but you get more the drivers to show up too. So but I think it's a good thing. I'd like to see those more supported. It's hard out here. The association, it's just a spatial issue out here is it's harder to get association races because people have to drive so far. You know, you get back where you are, Bobby, you don't have to go real far to get to a lot of races. You know, I mean,
I'm within 2 hours of like 5
yeah.
tracks.
Now, yeah, you get to where Brian is now. I got no dog in the hunt of complaining. You know, I mean, some of those guys up there, you know, they got, you know, maybe 1 points race a couple hundred miles away, and then all of a sudden they're driving, you know, 500, 1,000 miles to go to points races. I mean, it's Division 5 can be pretty rough. I mean, depending on where you're placed there, but
3 hours is pretty much the closest we got. You know, you're going 3 or 7. That's just the way it is.
Yeah. And then beyond that, then you're going even further at that point.
I feel bad for some of them because they can't get into like the Brainerd National event, you know, because they just don't have the grade points for it. So it's,
and that's the thing. I mean, let these. I just as a self-employed businessman, I don't understand why they don't let more people in. That part makes no sense to me.
Well, this 60. Actually, let me refresh. Let's see.
It's full. It was full in 8 minutes.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. There's people blowing up.
61. Wow. So a world champ entered already.
I don't understand why.
That was silly. Who would do that at grade 8? Yeah, that race needs to be more attended. We're gonna have David Kennedy on the show eventually. He is the head of NHRA's multimedia and the contingency program, and we're gonna kind of pick his brain about how the contingency works, how maybe, you know, some contingency sponsors would like to participate if heads up racing in class was happening at national events, not at the Baby Gators where there's 3 people in the stands. I just think that's pointless. That's just my thinking out loud, though. People have heard me say that stuff 100 times already. But if I'm just saying from my point, if I owned a business and I had lots of money and could participate, I probably wouldn't, because who's going to watch you race on a Thursday or win class at a divisional where there's nobody in the stands? I want to see you win class on a Friday at the Gator Nationals in front of a crowd. We used to qualify Thursday, run class on Friday, elimination starting on Saturday. If I knew that your car was going to be in front of eyeballs on Friday and Saturday, then I start thinking about throwing my money into the mix. But I don't know. Those are the kind of questions I have for that gentleman.
Yeah, I and I'll be open ears on that when that happens. I mean, I just, like I said, incentivizing that, and the incentives, like I said, that has something to do for the sponsors too, the people that would actually pay that. Well, there's incentive. You know, I mean, there's guys going fast, and we're a group of people with a lot of discretionary income. I mean, we evidently all of us may have a little bit more money than sense by engaging in what we engage in the first place. I mean, I mean, you think of it realistically, we'd be out bracket racing, some car that, we can make go fast without any rules. You do a couple of bolt-ons and, well, we're out having a good time, and I'm going, nines in some new Mustang or Challenger. Now, you've got a little 289 Mustang you're trying to make go fast, with a under 500 CFM carburetor, trying to make it rip, I mean, and you did good. I mean, you won that race. I never even got to congratulate you for that. But yeah, I mean, you look at the rules, or take your 5.0 Mustang with this, that intake manifold that's on there. I mean, what sense does that make? I mean, that thing is, it's probably that's probably right behind the F body as a good race car, but they never had an engine in them. They got tiny little.
Yeah, that engine. I don't know what they were thinking with that whole top to bottom with that thing.
Well, it was 1987, and they were trying to make torque with the manifold. That's what they were doing. So those cars were a lot of fun to drive. I mean, for a 14-second car, they were more fun than you can imagine, especially if they had a 5-speed in them. They were a blast.
And no two of them are casted the same. I mean, I have about 10 of those manifolds that I just picked up at scrap yards, and they're just like, what kind of quality control was there, with these things? This is ridiculous.
But that was the car the decade before the car Brian's racing. That car was a blast. I mean, those cars were, for their time, for some simple, basic motor that had been around, since when did the 221 come out? 1961 or so. I mean, that basic engine, lasted for 40 years. I mean, it was something that it was pretty indestructible. Just like I said, I had new cars of both cars like you guys have, and I had a new Fox body Mustang, and I had new F body cars. They were both a blast at their time. They were the car to have. They were fun, infinite fun to drive on the street, and it's now cars have so much power now. It's like I said, I've ridden in some, I don't have any new supercharged cars, but a couple friends have, they've got those cars, and they're just, it's frightening how fast they are. I mean, just something that would just take and eat my A automatic car for lunch, a pretty decent A automatic car, and just eat it as a street car is pretty astounding now. So I don't know. I mean, bringing those guys, trying to get some of those people over to stock. And I mean, they need to get some new blood in stock and super stock. And I don't know how that's going to happen. That's probably a topic for another show sometime, but I think that'd be a good thing for you guys to cover, is trying to get new blood into the sport.
We cover it every episode. We always ask the guest. That was actually going to be our next question to you. What do you got?
I wish there was an answer, but I mean, I think it's the technical and financial aspects of it, I think, shy people away. It's tough. It's tough. It's not really easy. I mean, like I said, you go to a race, and I'll take the first thing that comes to my mind. You look at a 305 Camaro, you're like, that car just went 1090. What? You're like, that's a 16-second car. Like, how is that possible? And it's just, it doesn't seem rationally possible. So to a layman's term of somebody not understanding what they're dealing with, it's very few and far between to try to get somebody into this. But I think these new cars I was hoping they would breathe more new blood, and they have, but they've brought some people in. But I think, like I was saying earlier in the show, I said, if for somebody to come into the race, I said a smaller motored, Cobra Jet or Copo that's naturally aspirated it's the way to jump in. I mean, because some of those cars, like I said, they get kind of, I don't know if they're abandoned, but they're abandoned for the new things. Like I said, the guys that go out and buy them, every 2 years religiously, because it seems like nobody ever has one of those. It seems like, for some reason, seems like half the people I know have multiples of them. So it's one of those things that, I think that's the bang for the buck, and that's the entry point for people. I mean, it seems a little spooky to put somebody maybe that hasn't raced in a 9-second car, but I think those cars they're safe, and I think they drive really well. One of those things I don't see it being a big issue. So, but I don't know how to get new blood into this. Like I said, I just think I don't know how you get people to cross over. Like I said, it's one of those things. I wish there was a simple plan to getting some of these guys from this, the street racing thing, which has become pretty big again, and all the no prep and the Romacha Brung type things, which bring out tons of fans. That's the thing, and NHRA has some stuff to grab the fans. That's why bring more stock and super stock cars that stand up 3 feet in the air. People want to see that, as opposed to, cars going fast on the street. That's something that's a show in itself. I mean, we're all accustomed to it. Even Brian, you haven't been in this all that long, but for me, it's second nature, but it still will catch my eye when a car leaves and I watch it and it's, it hits second gear and it's still, the bumper's still, 3 inches from the ground. You're like, wow, what's going on there? And I see somebody, post a video online. I mean, I think, who did I see? I saw somebody post a video. I remember I didn't think anything of it. And I don't even know. It was Billy Harper. I saw him post a video of his Nova and I watched it leave and I'm like, that never gets old. It just doesn't get old. And I think they need to somehow, that's where you open up the fields and let more people in and get people, I don't want to get into a wheelie contest because I think that's asking for people to wreck cars. That's a bad deal. But I mean, just being a class where there's a lot of that going on. I think it's interesting. People want to see it. Now, like you said, Bobby, I think in the stands and people want to see that on Friday at a national event. They go out for class. A bunch of these cars stand up. People want to watch it. They don't get super gas and super comp and things like that. I think that's why you see Top Dragster and Top Sportsman working better. But you don't see it. The interest, it's confusing. Throttle stops are confusing to the average person. They're just, still to this day, when they first came out, I'd bring people to the races and they'd look and they'd be like, well, what is that? What is that all about? And 25 years later, people come and they're like, what is that all about? I don't understand. It takes off and then it shuts off. I mean, it kind of defeats the purpose of racing. I mean, I'm like, it's a consistency thing, but
Right.
I don't think fans get that at all.
No,
There's
you'd have to tell the
definitely
fans, head straight to the finish line. Like if I was Alan Reinhardt, I'd say everybody head straight to the finish line if you want to enjoy this category and watch them battle it out down at the stripe. Stock and super stock heads to the starting line. You want to see cool wheelies. We need help from the announcers. We need help from NHRA. I try to do my part at races, hand out flyers, let people sit in the car. Here, this is what stock and super stock are all about. Take this flyer that explains the rules, explains weight breaks and the handicap system. Like I get people to try to understand it more, enjoy it more. Whether they actually go out and buy a car, I don't know. That's going to take a little more convincing, but at least bring a little bit more awareness. Is my thing. I want to thank a couple of people right here. Terry Emmons sent 200 stars, and he said, my man Paul, Carl John Seawick sent stars, 99 stars. Thank you. Jeff Cheney sent 530 stars. RJ Torres sent 200 stars. So we appreciate that. Jeremy Duncan said Gainesville Stock Eliminator took 7 minutes to fill up. Yeah, we definitely saw that with our own eyes here. And I guess there's spot saving. There's world champions already entering. I don't know why they're doing it so quickly. The
Emmons boys, they're another one that's always on me about time to park some slow stuff and to start winning races. I mean, Jerry and I had some pretty good conversations over the last few months about that, and it's something I'm gonna head towards trying to get situated, and it's time for me to try to drive something to win races rather than all the class stuff. I think I've done what I can. I don't know if there's much less I can do, but
by the looks of your room, you're running out of room to put class trophies. So
yeah,
so there's a couple more spots I've got them too. So
a big Wally.
Yeah. That's what's more important at this point for me. So,
all right, Paul. Well, we really appreciate you spending a lot of time with us today. And,
no problem.
It's a great episode. Learning a lot from you and your knowledge and all these different cars that you tried to run and have been successful with, and obviously based on your background back there with all those class trophies and divisional and open trophies in there too.
That's on my wife's end, not mine, believe it or not. I do not have an event win under my belt. Lots of bracket wins, even a bracket finals, like I've won that, but gotten the stalker, and I have come up short. And
You haven't made it easy on yourself, though. I mean, the cars that you've been
well,
running.
these cars have been a little tougher. I will give you
Yeah.
that.
So that's
part's
why
been a
everybody's
little
getting
tougher.
on you, and to be honest, I'm gonna be, and a lot of others will be fearful if you do put yourself in a car that probably has a higher probability of winning events. So,
Yeah. Well, that's where you're going to see me for the next few years chasing that now. So
well, best of luck to you. And,
thank you.
We will be seeing you, Pomona.
Yep.
You will be at Pomona. You're entered in Gainesville. So I will definitely be at one of those, and I will be seeing you in person.
Yeah, I just entered
again.
Pomona too, so I'm good there.
All right.
Cool. Well, thanks you
Excellent.
very much for having me on, guys.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, we'll be talking to you here soon.
All right.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot, Paul. This is Class Racing Today.
Thank you.
ClassRacingToday.com. ClassRacingToday@gmail.com if you have any questions or comments. Again, thank you all for supporting the show by sharing it out to your friends, by sending stars on Facebook as we do the live videos, and also by choosing to donate yourself so you can help support the show. Also, we want to remember Kenwood Welding and Metallizing in Baltimore, Maryland for supporting the show as well. Thanks a lot, Brian and Bobby. We will see you next year as we wrap up 2021. We can start a good 2022. Thank you so much. Have a great day. We'll see you next time. Happy New Year.